morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so we're going to introduce ourselves, so you introduce yourselves, and then I'll read the question and we can get started. My name is Shelby Dietz. I'm the manager of outreach and community engagement at the University of Geneva in Raleigh for the university as well.
Dr. Diane Nicolette, I'm one of your school board trustees and a very proud trustee.
Fred Watkin, I'm a professor of political science at Truckee Meadows Community College.
Hello, we are Unit 1. My name is Michael Terrazas.
I'm Winter Fargo.
My name is Silas Cruz, and these are our teachers, Miss Karsten and Mr. Sal. Hello.
Hello.
Alrighty. Montesquieu said, if a republic be small, it is destroyed by a foreign force. If it be large, it is ruined by an internal imperfection. Do you agree with his assessments regarding the dilemmas facing large and small republics? How did the presence of foreign powers, such as France, Spain, or neighboring indigenous nations, help shape the colonists' arguments or proposals for governmental structure? And in your opinion, has the American constitutional system struck a balance between the strength of a large republic and the internal harmony of a small one? When you're ready, you may begin.
We agree with Montesquieu's assessments regarding the dilemmas faced by large and small republics. Brutus No. 1 states that expansive nations cannot meet the needs nor pursue the aspirations of all their peoples, which has led to the downfall of every great republic in history, including the Roman Republic, which, due to factions, broke down into a civil war, ultimately devolving into a tyranny. Yet, for all the internal imperfection of large nations, lesser ones are vulnerable to foreign force. Federalist No. 4 voices the certainty that some European power would come along and conquer a small republic.
The presence of foreign nations such as France, Spain, and other indigenous nations greatly influenced the colonists' arguments and proposals for governmental structure. Conflicts with these powers, like the French and Indian War, signified the need for unity, military defense, and diplomatic credibility.
To address these necessities, the Articles of Confederation followed the lead of the French colonial government, which prioritized regional autonomy and featured a weaker centralized authority. Articles 7 and 8 reserved military authority and taxation to the states.
However, under the Articles, despite having been granted the sole authority to negotiate peace with other nations, Congress was incapable of forcing the states to comply with its treaties. As such, the treaties made with Holland and France were violated. In response in his essay, Vices of the Political System of the United States, James Madison asserted we were racing towards conflict.
To address these problems, the U.S. Constitution borrowed from the Spanish idea of a strong central authority. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 12 granted Congress the power to raise and support armies, and Clause 15 gave it the power to use them. Clause 1 grants the power to tax. The Constitution also borrowed from indigenous ideas, such as federalism and the separation of powers present in the Iroquois' Great Law of Peace.
The American constitutional system has not successfully struck a balance between the strength of a large republic and the internal harmony of a small one, because that was never the point. Harmony, as the framers envisioned it, was the same as homogeneity. But James Madison in Federalist 10 said that it was a necessity to maintain diverse competing interests to prevent one factional majority from taking control of the government. While Congress is often gridlocked and inefficient, this is by design, so factions will be forced to compromise for the public good.
The framers designed the Constitution around this disharmony. This is why the 10th Amendment exists, to reserve powers and autonomy to the states, which naturally creates conflict, currently with issues such as immigration, environment, and healthcare.
Not only is the necessity of disharmony present in our government structure, but in our economic structure as well. Diverse markets are essential to ensure that companies are forced to compromise and improve the quality of their goods for the public. Yet, during the Gilded Age, companies coalesced into monopolies, subject to no authority. And so we adapted, passing the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890, not only rendering such corporations legal, but allowing the federal government to break them apart and preserve our lack of internal harmony.
Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes said that America will more likely endure if we protect all views in what John Stuart Mill called the free marketplace of ideas. This diversity brings disharmony, but that is the nature of a large, diverse, free republic. Thank you.
So you guys talked about the importance of the disharmony. When we exist in a system where the president and our Congress are ruled by the same party, how do we protect that disharmony, that sense of conflict that protects a lot of like American governmental ideals?
We were able to protect this disharmony through the filibuster, which we can see in the recent government shutdown, allowed the Democratic Party to keep their voice heard and allow them to protect their viewpoints.
Additionally, the 10th Amendment allows us to reserve those rights back to the states that are not enumerated in Article 1, Section 8. And so even though there may be a factional majority in the federal government, state governments are able to handle other things.
Looking towards the future and trying to get away from this kind of situation where we have to even worry about this in the first place, we can also implement independent redistricting commissions, because gerrymandering famously creates a winner-take-all system, which results in these extreme leaders, extreme one way or the other leaders, getting power in the first place.
So looking at the current political and social divisions, what might Montesquieu say about the strengths and weaknesses of the modern American republic?
I would say one of the weaknesses of the modern republic is the debt that our country is currently in. We are $38 trillion in debt. And although Article 1, Section 8, Clause 2 gives government the power to borrow, there is no limit to that borrowing. And there was a balanced budget amendment that was proposed, but it was one Senate vote away, so it was not passed.
While it doesn't resemble anything that Montesquieu was able to conceive of himself, I think that Montesquieu would be impressed by the way that we're able to distribute powers between the state and federal levels. For example, due to partisanship, we had the longest government shutdown in history, which caused a ton of problems when federal programs stopped supporting citizens. However, the founders designed our Constitution with situations like this in mind with the 10th Amendment. Because the 10th Amendment gives power to the states, we were able to call a special legislative session and pass Bill SB 3, creating the Silver State General Welfare Fund. That way, even if the federal government does start to fail, our state government can take up the slack with its own funds.
Additionally, I think that Montesquieu, as my colleague said, would be incredibly impressed, because while he was unable to give an exact number for what he believed was the perfect size for a republic, Aristotle attempted to using a math equation based on knowing people with at least two powers of separation. And that number was around 5,000. So if Montesquieu were to see our American system today, sitting at 330 million people and still able to function, I believe he would be extremely impressed.
But are we functioning? I appreciate your optimism, but many are very much concerned that the Constitution is framed, that the system is so destructive now that our republic is in rapid decline. You're convinced that we don't have anything to worry about?
Not that we don't have anything to worry about, but I am also optimistic for the future. I believe that with programs like this, educating the youth in order to create that change in the government when they are of the age that can apply to it. So under Article 1, Section 2, Clause 1, it states that House of Representative members need to be at least 25. Once we are at that age, we can run for those seats and we can create that change because we know how to.
We undoubtedly, our nation will survive, but there is a reasonable expectation for there to be growing pains, especially after the Civil War when we were reincorporating the South back into the Union, and we needed to and with court cases that said that we had to reintegrate schools into the system, there was a great deal of violence, especially once people of color tried to start getting voting rights. This resulted in violence in situations like at the Edmund Pass Bridge. It resulted in violence with the Little Rock Nine. It got so bad that President Grant even had to suspend the Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2 right to habeas corpus, but we're still here today. Growing pains have never and aren't going to break the nation.
Going back to the point about the size of our nation, do you think that the size, like, we should still fear it, our nation being too large considering modern technology, or is that something that we shouldn't have to worry about because we're able to communicate so easily and openly?
I believe that communication being advanced through technology like telephones has allowed us to, allow me to rephrase, it has allowed us to create that stronger connection between our representatives and ourselves. In Brutus I, one of the main concerns of Robert Gates was that the federal government would be too far removed from the people, and yet now we are able to call our House of Representative members and our Senate members through this advancement of technology.
Furthermore, in the modern era, not necessarily due to technology, but in large part due to industrialization, we don't see the same kinds of divides, like geographic divides, that make large nations a concern. Because as far as political parties go, it's not north and south, that's left or right, it's urban areas and rural areas. Because there's no single cohesive geographic form that can rally or try to secede or even just revolt, that we don't need, the size of the nation isn't a concern in the traditional way.
I'm going to shift just a little bit to the now in this discussion with media and in its all forms, 24/7. How many news stations, whether it's print or on your phone or TV, doesn't matter. All the news sources. How do you think that our communication and how we share news in today's society contributes negatively or positively to our strength as a nation?
There are a lot of ways in which it contributes positively to the strength of our nation because it enables the beginning of social revolutions on a large scale. For example, the residents of Windsor Park, Las Vegas, in a historically black community, the infrastructure in their neighborhood has been totally collapsing. And on their own, they would never be able to deal with this problem. However, because of news programs and media sources, they're able to rally enough support from around the state that in our recent Nevada Special Legislative Session, we were able to pass Bill SB 6 that uses state funds to relocate these people.
I believe that it can negatively affect people's views. Many news channels or articles are biased and lean one way or the other. And although there are some that meet in the middle, a lot of people are looking at the one that they believe is more morally correct. And as you look more into that one side, you get dragged into a hole of the same views.
These are the concepts of confirmation bias and echo chambers, allowing us to reinforce views that maybe we really should challenge.
America has always had problems with its republic and its democracy. Many even internationally question just how democratic and how much of a republic we are. In the 2024 election, only 51% of eligible voters participated, 49% stayed home. Worst democratic performance in any industrialized society. If we look at the state situations, and you had cited the tremendous deficit, we have problems now that are overwhelming the national government, budget cuts that are occurring, a social framework that is about to collapse with Social Security and Medicare because it goes bankrupt in 4 years. Isn't this all evidence of a society that's just too large to sustain itself, cannot keep the heart of democracy going?
I wouldn't say that the lack of voting is show that we are too large as a society, because that is left to the people's discretion. one of the concepts that we learned was that an ignorant vote is worse than no vote. And when the people determine that they themselves do not have enough information to correctly identify how they would like the country to move forward, they simply remove themselves from this situation. And I believe that that is a very responsible thing to do, and I don't think that has to deal with the size of our nation.
With regards to the concern that federal programs are beginning to fail, this is again a concern for growing pains, but it also is a possibility for a great catalyst of change. Karl Marx, in his book The Communist Manifesto, said that the only time people actually begin to change systems, even once they're broken, is when they break, when people are no longer able to support themselves. On the state level, we see this with SB3 and the Silver State General Welfare Fund, but that's only where it's beginning. Even Massachusetts has a ton of healthcare programs, not just subsidizing healthcare, but even just helping citizens find healthcare in the first place.
We'll call. Great job. You guys, we got through 7 questions, which is fantastic. It was well balanced. You guys were able to connect, like, I think I wrote down, connected tech to Brutus one slide. I think that, like, that just shows a really fantastic understanding of the concepts of what you guys are learning and what you guys are talking about, because you're able to connect, like, these current examples, and you guys had a lot of fantastic historical examples as well that didn't necessarily favor one era or another, which I thought was very impressive. But to connect those back to, like, the philosophies behind the Constitution is very impressive. So you guys did a great job.
Absolutely agree, and I never get tired of saying this. Once again, the judge becomes the student. Thank you very much. I learned a great deal, and I appreciate that. I will say that your firmness and your conviction, when I think faced with some tough questions and problems that are real, your optimism is absolutely a blessing, and I appreciate that. And I'm looking at the future here, and I feel very comfortable. And thank you for how you played off of each other and your eye contact. It was lovely. Thank you.
And I certainly agree with the assessments. Wasn't trying to be Daisy Downer, just wanted to be present. Of course, I did a good job, I know. Thank you. But yes, it's challenging times, and you took a very unique approach, I thought, to the testimony, based on one of the most philosophically tunneled topics I think I've seen in my days of judging. So I think this is an exceptionally difficult question. And I thought it was a very interesting way by which you chose to approach it. And yes, you validated, did a fantastic job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Very good.
Great job. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thanks so much for the kind comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For the kind comments.
Who's that, David? How's that score?
Yeah, where's mine?
Thank you. What was that?
You guys did so good. Good job.
Yes. We broke it. We broke it. We broke it.
8 on David's scale.
I think that's table for center. I just moved, so mine was
saying it, it's like, I don't know,
I was starting, I was like, no, let me go. you don't want to hold up before you have a chance to talk. Your binders in the right way. If you hear a Republican say
What? Can't believe it. He's summoning us. Is Thor gone?
Either way, you know, one follow. We don't incline always a combination of possibly speaking and then everyone else.
I'm trying to hold it in, but
Happy about that?
Huh?
Yeah.
Happy.